Tamisi here, and today I am doing my 2025 wrap-up. This video is going to be broken up in two parts, and I'm just going to do a high-level overview of the books that I really loved for 2025. Some of them, they're not 5 stars, but they are unforgettable, and I would love for you to add them to your TBR for this year. But first things first, let's address the elephant in the room. I know I have been MIA on this channel, and I am so sorry for that because I had every intention of 2025 being very active on my YouTube channel. It's really unexcusable, and I did a lot of reflecting because I have goals that I want to accomplish for 2026. And being active on this YouTube channel and growing and building my community is top priority for me this year. My goal for this channel is to at least post every other week. Eventually, I would love to ramp it up to be consistent, posting once a week. So now that I've addressed that, I want to go back to my 2025 reading wrap up. I use to track my reading is StoryGraph. I converted to StoryGraph earlier last year around January, and it has been a game changer. I am not switching from StoryGraph. I know a lot of people are switching. They're using Fable, they're using Pagebound. And to me, StoryGraph is where I'm going to stay because I love the graph that it provides, and I love how I'm able to really get a visual of what I'm reading, the genres that I'm reading, how I'm reading. It's just, it's for me. The fact that it's Black owned is just like a plus. So I just pulled up my StoryGraph stats, and I'm going to have it on the screen, but last year I read 101 books. My top genres were fantasy, romance, LGBTQIA+, science fiction, and historical, which I'm really proud of myself for the historical romance being in my top genres because last year I really wanted to diversify the genres that I read. So I really got into contemporary and I fell in love with historical romances. So I'm really proud of myself for that. The top authors that I read of 2025 were Octavia E. Butler, Ruby Dixon, which I'll talk about that in this video, and T. Kingfisher. The first book that I read this year was Heavenly Tyrant by Sharon Zhang Zhao, and the last book that I read this year was Ring Shot by P. Shelley Clark, and I buddy read that with my husband. The longest book that I read this year was Alchemized by Sin-Lin Yu, and look how thick this book was. And I was actually surprised because I read Acheron this year, and this thing is chunky. Now I'm just curious as to how many pages this book has because this has 728. And Alchemized has, how many pages? 1,030. Granted, this is a little longer, so that explains why. But still pretty huge books. And also, Daughter of the Forest was pretty big. The shortest book that I read this year was Recitatif by Toni Morrison, and this is my first book by Toni Morrison, and I do plan on reading the rest of her catalog. I'm just afraid because I just don't want to be emotionally devastated. And from the reactions of my mutuals who have read, The Bluest Eye or Sula, it has brought a lot of emotion out of them, and I'm just not ready for that. Life is already depressing enough. I don't know if I want to add that other layer just yet. Now, I will say with Recitatif, I do suggest you do this as a buddy read. And if you can, do it as a group read. Get a few of your book besties because this book is so introspective, and it is the type of book where you want to discuss, really gauge people's perspectives and learn about their lived experiences as to why they have these preconceived notions as to who the characters are. So in Recitatif, Toni Morrison tracks the lives of these two main characters, and she does not disclose the race of the two characters, right? So it's interesting once you finish the story, you're trying to figure out who was Black and who was white. And just based on the conversations that you have with your friends who read this book with you, it's going to be interesting to see why they think XYZ character is Black or white. Now, besides the racial aspect, there is a deeper message behind the story, but I don't want to spoil it. I just want you to add this to your TBR for this year. Now, as for my most read author of 2025, which is Miss Octavia E. Butler, as you can see, I have been collecting her books. I'm so grateful that I started reading her in 2025, and my goal was to complete her catalog but unfortunately I was not able to accomplish my goal. I still have to read Fledgling and Kindred, but I will be getting to those very soon. Now, I didn't read Parable of the Sower in 2025. I actually read this at the end of 2024. This was for my book club, but I did finish in 2025 this duology because I started reading Parable of the Talents in January. I love this duology. I think it should be required reading, especially for high schoolers. And I think that, everyone should read this book. And I think right now, more than ever, this should be a book that you should be reading because it really parallels our world in the current climate that we're in. And it's scary, but it's necessary reading. And again, the Earthseed duology, Parable of the Sower, Parables of the Talents, this is a very heavy read, so be mindful of that. It will be triggering. It can even make you feel scared at times. But again, I really highly suggest that you read this come 2025. And again, don't just read Parable of the Sower, because I see this quite often where people will read Parable of the Sower and they don't finish. You have to read Parable of the Talents. Parable of the Talents is like the reason why this book exists. You have to read book 2, right? You have to. If you're going to read this, again, make sure you finish the duology. Getting into the Lilith Brood trilogy and the Pattern Mastering series, I would say out of these two, the Lilith Brood trilogy, honestly, out of everything that I've read by her, the Lilith Brood trilogy is my favorite trilogy of hers, or favorite series of hers. And specifically book 3, which is Imago, is my favorite book of hers of all time. I don't think Kindred or Fledgling can compare to the feeling that I get when I think about this book. Again, I haven't read Kindred yet, I haven't read Fledgling, but I don't think anything can top Imago for me. With the Patterning series, even though I said Imago was my favorite book of hers, all of her books are phenomenal. I mean, every single one. They're all rated 4 stars and above. The reason some of them are even 4 stars is because specifically with the Patterning series, this was our first published series. And it's interesting because even though Wild Seed is book 1, this was actually written last. So the whole series was written out of chronological order. You still have to read it based on how the series was designed. So even though Wild Seed was written last, it's still book 1. And book 4, The Pattern Master, this was written first, but this is the last book in the series. And you'll see why as you read it. And I would say this is her weakest book, which is understandable. This is the first book that she ever wrote and was published. So there is a third book in here, like a novella in between the series that I suggest you find, or you can find like a synopsis on Reddit. It was published, but then Octavia Butler didn't like the story, and so it was retracted. So between Clay's arc and Pattern Master, there's this like a gap that you can't really figure out what you're missing, but there is key information. So I highly suggest finding book 3 or 3.5, which is called Survivor, online, reading that before you read Pattern Master. Now onto some of my lighter books, like my romanticities. Son of the Morning by Kweke Emezi. This book was delicious. This is a Lucifer inspired romantasy where the FMC falls in love with the devil himself. And this is insta love done right. I could not get enough of this book. And I was so excited for this book to be published because in 2025, I was so proud of the amount of Black authors that were able to publish romantasies in traditional publishing. So yeah, 2025 was the year of Black romantasies. And this one finished off the end of the year. And this was the best was for last because this was amazing. Speaking on another book that has insta-love done right, Warrior Princess Assassin. And I know a lot of people are not going to like this, but I don't care. I loved it. I ate it up. And I know that I'm in the outlier of people who like a medium burn and insta-love. I honestly don't care for slow burns. Because I feel like a lot of times it's used as a device to just keep the plot going forward instead of actually like developing a story. I would much rather read a book about a relationship, a real relationship developing, than like all of this freaking fake enemies to lovers, fake unnecessary drama, fake unnecessary miscommunication trope. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm in my 30s now, but like, I don't have time for it. Like, I don't care that they fell in love in a week. I loved it. On to another romantasy that stole my heart this year. When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vita Kelly. And mind you, Vanessa illustrated this cover. And she provided all of the illustrations in this book as a whole. First of all, so let's get into the cover and let's admire how beautiful this is. Like, I wish, let me see. Try to get back. This cover is beautiful. And I want to just show you some of the illustrations in this book. If I can find them, of course. Look at that. This is a queer romantasy, and I really loved how unique this story was. It's like a historical romantasy, and I don't like really giving the plots of stories because I don't read the synopsis of books. I very much like to go into things blind because it just takes away from the enjoyment. Like, I want to be surprised. Again, this is a historical romantasy. I will say I really loved this story. If you want to know about the synopsis, go look it up. I'm not telling you. I just want you to read this. Just read it. Like I said in the beginning of the video, in 2025, I wanted to expand my reading and read more diversely. And I was already reading diversely, but what I meant is that I wanted to expand the genres that I read. So I started to read more contemporary this year, and I got into S.A. Cosby. Razor Blade Tears is one of my favorite books of all time now. S.A. Cosby's writing is phenomenal. And I'm so excited that this has been auctioned to become a movie because I would love to see this in theaters. This was my first introduction into like the contemporary thriller genre. And I'm so glad I started off with S.A. Cosby because a lot of my mutuals were raving about this story. And to give you a little synopsis of this story, because you know I don't really like giving synopsis, essentially Razor Blade Tears is about two fathers who have this very checkered past, and they are going on this hunt to avenge their two sons who were married. Their sons were gay, and both of them were very homophobic. They weren't good fathers, they weren't good people, but they're trying to atone in the way that they can by finding the killer who murdered their two boys. On this journey of them unpacking their homophobia, racism, classism, etc., and them also kicking some ass, they're also like deconstructing some of the thoughts and belief systems that they had, and taking accountability in the way that they can. Again, this book is not for those who are looking for the perfect protagonist. That's not it. This book was written by a Black man raised in Virginia, in the South Virginia specifically, and it's based on lived experiences. So if you get uncomfortable with the vernacular and the language that is used that is accurate to the environment that these characters are in, don't read this book. Because I've seen, not a lot, but too many, in my opinion, of specifically white women reading this book and talking about how the language made them uncomfortable or how the characters made them uncomfortable. And it's like this uncomfortable feeling is something that you should sit with. Why does it make you uncomfortable? And again, understanding that you are not the target audience for a book, and that's okay. When you are reading a book, or even me, when I'm reading a book, and I may not necessarily enjoy the book, I'm always trying to figure out, was I the necessary target audience? So for example, if I'm reading a middle grade book and I'm complaining about it, oh, the characters were too immature, they were whining, they were making stupid decisions. When I know that I'm an adult and that this book was written for someone who is in, middle grade, ages 8 to 13, whatever, is that fair for me to then critique the book? I can say that, oh, I felt like the pacing was off, or I felt like, the characters weren't as fleshed out. Those are, valid critiques. But when you just complain about the actual character, to me, it comes from a place of privilege. So If you're white and you're reading this, watching this video, and you decide to pick up S.A. Cosby, keep that in mind. Again, this is a book that I want so many people to read. My husband read it this year. Well, he read it last year, you know what I mean? And he loved it. I think this was the second book that he read when he started getting into reading. Last year, the first book was Project Hail Mary, and I kept saying, better read Razor Blade Tears next. And he read it and yeah, loved it. So I want to mention, I cried like a baby at the end of this story. Whole face wet. Cried so hard. This book is so beautiful. Tagging on to me expanding the genres that I was reading in 2025, I got introduced to Miss Beverly Jenkins. I am so happy, and I'm actually mad at myself for not reading her books sooner because she was on my radar in 2024 and I just didn't read her. And I started reading her last year, and all that I've read come now since 2026 is Beverly Jenkins. She was the first book that I finished in 2026. And I'm currently reading another book by Miss Beverly Jenkins. I started off reading Rebel, which was how I was introduced to her. Fell in love. The men in her books are just perfect. This is the epitome of just Black love. She writes yearning like no other. I don't know what she puts in these books, but I'm hooked every single time. Yes, I know the characters are going to be together, but it's the journey. It's the tension. It's the angst. It's just the way that these men just are swooning over these women. And then I was so blessed to sit in on an interview with Miss Beverly Jenkins, thanks to my book bestie, Krista, she was the one who got me into Beverly Jenkins. She is like the Beverly Jenkins historian. She knows any and everything about these books. She's read all of her whole catalog, and her page is just dedicated to Beverly Jenkins. She was able to host an interview of Miss Beverly Jenkins, and Beverly Jenkins says that she would prefer that you read her books in publication order. She does know that a lot of people do start off with her series with Rebel. I don't know why, but this is getting a lot of people into her catalog. Now I have been backtracking, starting from publication order. I read Night Song, and now I'm on Through the Storm. So I don't even know what book I'm on, but I am just loving these books and the characters, and a lot of these are interconnected standalone. I think she said all of them actually have some connection to one another, except there's just one book. So now that I've been reading the books in publication order and just seeing how some of these characters connect, like the Levesque brothers, and now reading Through the Storm, which, is connected to Forbidden. Oh my God. I love her book so much. And I've been trying to collect the paperbacks that have the actual characters on the covers. It's beautiful. So if you're trying to diversify your reading and you want to expand and you love a good romance, if you're a romanticy girly, you need to read Beverly Jenkins. I suggest starting off with Rebel, Forbidden, or starting off publication order, which book one is Night Song. Just read a book. Indigo, Topaz, there's just so many books by her. Pick up one for 2026. Now, onto a book that really shocked me this year and one of my top epic fantasies, Birth of a Dynasty by Chinaza Bado. And again, I'm still blown away that this is her first fantasy book because there's just no way. The way that she executed this book, and I'm shocked at how small this book is because there was so much going on and she was able to flesh out all of the plot points. And I'm so ready for book two. Y'all, it was phenomenal. This book is truly 5 stars. There's nothing to critique this book is about. If you have something to say about this book, I don't want to hear it. If you love Game of Thrones or George R.R. Martin's writing style, you are going to love Birth of a Dynasty. This is freaking Game of Thrones, but in a West African inspired fantasy world. That's the only way I can describe it. But it has the same ruthlessness, the same political intrigue, and everyone's fighting for the freaking crown. The different POVs that are happening in this book. I mean, I can go on and on about this story. You need to add it to your TBR because book 2 is coming out this year. You need to read this ASAP. And lastly, I'm going to finish it off with one of my favorite books of all time now. and that is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. I am so happy that I discovered this author. Oh, I just almost hit myself. Because her writing is so lyrical and whimsical, and the way that she writes these characters, it's like no other. She really emphasizes the familiar bonds of siblings in all of her stories that I've read so far. So in the Seven Water series, I've read books 1, 2, and 3. I think there's 6 books in total. The 3 books that I've read so far have just all blown me away. Book 2 actually made me cry the most because I was so connected to the characters that are in book 1. She writes love stories like no other. Not even just like love between like, the couples, but the love that is shared between the family of Seven Waters. This family, these group of people, and the way that they protect one another, it's like no other because there are not many books that actually focus on the relationship of siblings. And I really admire that in this story. And this is set in pre-colonized Ireland, and it has a lot of Irish folklore and mythology. The world is beautiful and lush. And I also read her other series, which is Grimm and Blackthorn. I love her writing style. I mean, I'm really blown away, and I'm so happy that I was introduced to her books. Now, check your trigger warnings in all of them, specifically book 1. Even though the character starts off very young, this is not a YA. This is a adult fantasy. Be mindful of that. When I did my review, I made sure to put all of the trigger warnings because there are some unfortunate things that happen to the main character in this book. The prose of this story are like no other. The way that she just describes things, and there's never really a lot of action in her stories. Pretty much, it's a slow moving story. The way that she can just like make the mundane things seem magical in the way that she writes it is just unparalleled to me. Like I'm still blown away. I truly loved Daughter of the Forest, one that I will never stop raving about, and I want everyone to read it. I'm going to end it here. Again, there's going to be a part 2 of my 2025 wrap up because I couldn't get through all of the books, y'all. Even in my part 2, I still didn't get through all the books. I loved so many books last year, but you know what? It's okay. I'm going to be posting on here more. I'm going to be sharing all the books that I loved of 2025 in general. So like if you love reading diversely, or you want to get into reading and you like the books that I like and you have similar like reading style or like reading taste, follow me. So again, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.